The difference between amateur technique and pro technique is massive, and the serve is one of the biggest examples of where you see this. Pickleball pros and other high-level players can serve up to 2 times the speed of the average player, and they get way more spin. So if you want that to be you, pay very close attention. So when we look at these 2 players serving, we have Drew on the right and a casual rec player on the left. First, I just want you to watch closely and try to see the differences for yourself. While you're watching, one thing I want you to keep in mind is that not every pro has the same technique. There's not a one-size-fits-all way to serve. However, there are some key things that all pros and all high-level players share when they hit a serve. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to dissect each one of these things, which is going to make it super easy for you to understand how you can implement them into your game. And of course, not every rec player has the same serving technique either, so you might not be making all the same mistakes that the players in the video are. Just try to understand each one of them so that when you go to the courts, you can try to fix them and serve more like a pro. So the first part of the swing where you see a big difference between amateur players and pro players is the loop. So the loop is this part of the swing. So it's from where you start to when you start to accelerate forward into the ball. So what you see with high-level players is they have a very fluid loop, meaning that when they start their loop to when they accelerate towards the ball, it's a very fluid motion and it goes in one motion. There's no stopping. So a stopping motion would be like this. So you're stopping, then you do the loop. So to show you another one, she's hitting the serve, stopping, and then going forward to hit the ball. And why that's bad is because when she does that, she loses all of her momentum that could be getting transferred into the ball. So a good loop is where she uses a continuous motion. The whole point of the loop is to get momentum so that she can carry it into the ball. So you're essentially doing this looping motion so your paddle is traveling faster towards the ball when you're about to hit it. The other thing you see beginner or amateur players doing is they're not using any loop at all. So they're just taking the paddle straight back. Sometimes they take it down like that. You could still hit a decent serve like that, but you're just missing out on that maximum power and the maximum RPMs that the pros are getting. So there's a reason pretty much every pro uses a loop like this when they're hitting their serve, and it's because it just makes it more effortless, which makes you have better accuracy, more spin, and more power. Let me see one more. So make sure when you go to the courts, try to use a fluid loop. Make sure when you start your swing from right here to when you hit the ball, there's no stopping, there's no slowing down. It should only be accelerating faster and faster as you go towards the ball. So the next part of the swing, and possibly the biggest difference between amateur players and pro players, is the wrist lag. So what I mean by wrist lag is what position your wrist is in and how loose your wrist is as you're accelerating towards the ball. So what amateurs do is they either have a locked wrist like this, so she has her wrist cocked, but it's locked back, or they don't even have the wrist cocked at all, and they just sort of have it locked in this downwards position where it's facing straight down and they go into the ball. Whether or not you do it like that, what you want to do is you want to sort of have your wrist loose and go into this position. So this is what we call the flashlight technique because our butt cap is facing forward to where we're hitting the ball. We want our wrist to fall into this position and be very loose so that when we're accelerating into the ball, it's transferring all the energy into our wrist and it can explode forward when we hit the ball. So what that looks like is this. So that's what we call the wrist lag. This is probably the most important part of the swing for getting power and spin. So you could not use any body, which I'm going to talk about later, and still get a lot of power just by having a good loop and good wrist lag. So to show you another example, good wrist lag looks like this. So the only thing you need to have very good wrist lag is you should be very loose when you're accelerating towards the ball. Your butt cap should be facing forward. It's almost like your paddle is dangling behind you. So you're sort of leading with this part of your arm more and your paddle is falling behind, almost like your arm is becoming a whip, right? So when you're doing this, it's going to transfer a ton of energy into the time when you hit the ball. So up here where I'm going to hit the ball, my paddle is going to be moving very fast, a lot faster than if I was just holding it, tight like this, because when I hit it, I kind of flex through a little bit, which I'll talk about later. But there's a lot of different ways to do wrist lag. You can fall into it more dramatically like Drew does, or you can sort of just subtly get there like how Kennedy does. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to doing wrist lag. You just want to make sure that you're in this position as you're going towards the ball and you have a very loose wrist. So now I'm going to go over the part of the swing that sort of initiates both the last two things we just talked about, and it's called rotation. So you have to have this to have very good wrist lag and a very good loop. But before I get into that, I wanted to mention that if you feel like you're already doing these things right, but you're still not getting enough power, you might just need a more powerful paddle. This is our paddle, the Duo, and it sits in the power category of paddles. And the reason for that is the way we made the core which essentially works like a trampoline. So as you can see, I don't need to put much energy into the ball to get a ton of power. It makes it more effortless, which gives me more accuracy. It also has that deeper, more Gen 3 sound, which is really satisfying. So if you just want a little bit more power on your serve without having to try so hard, this paddle could be for you. It comes out on the 15th of November, and it's going to be launching with a Black Friday sale, so it might sell out very fast. So stay tuned if you want one. So the difference between an amateur and a pro in terms of rotation is timing and speed. So amateurs, a lot of the time, they either don't rotate, so they just sort of arm the ball like that, or they rotate at the wrong time. So that might have looked good to you, but she's doing a key thing wrong. So what is it though? So in terms of the timing, you want to do your rotation just before you start your acceleration towards the ball, because it makes the energy travel into your arm like a whip. So a good version of that looks like this. She's doing the rotation just as she's starting her acceleration forward and her flashlight technique. So that's what gives you the energy that carries back into the ball. The other thing you see is very obvious when you compare an amateur to a pro is they just rotate faster. So she opens up her hips faster, which carries more energy into the ball. When you watch an amateur player play, they might just rotate at a slower speed than a pro. So this is a pretty easy thing to implement into your game. You want to start your rotation right before you're going into the ball. See how she's already sort of opening up as she's accelerating? And you can just try to rip open with your hips faster so that you get more power. Let's see one more example of that. So the next thing goes hand in hand with rotation. It's their forward energy into the ball. So a lot of the time amateurs are just sort of standing there, not really getting much forward energy into the ball. It looks something like that. They're just serving and there's no forward energy. They might be rotating, but they're not getting their weight behind the ball, which is what gives you a lot of power. Pros are almost always getting their energy into the ball. Sometimes they start from farther back, they take a step in like she just did. Sometimes they start on the baseline, but they swing their back leg into the court like that. You can do it in a variety of different ways. There's not really a one-size-fits-all forward momentum strategy. You just need to make sure that you're getting your body weight behind the ball. The one analogy I always use is, if she tried to push me without getting her weight behind me, she can't do it, right? But if she gets her weight into it more, now all of a sudden she could push me really hard. The same goes for getting power behind your shot. If you're not getting your weight into it, it's gonna come off with a lot less power. So make sure you're getting your weight into the ball and everything else is gonna feel a lot easier. So one more really big thing that separates amateurs from pro players is the way that they're contacting the ball with their wrists. So an amateur player might just be getting their topspin from lifting, which pros do this too. You need to be going low to high with your motion to get topspin, but pros also add in a little extra flair with what we call the windshield wiper. So what you see Kennedy doing, she's flexing her wrist forward a little bit, which gives her more power, but she's also sort of going like this. So she's going up with her wrist at a counterclockwise angle. She's righty, and that is giving her a lot more topspin. So if you're sort of just riding up the back of the ball and you're not doing that windshield wiper motion, you're gonna still get spin, but this is what gives you that crazy spin that makes the ball jump into your opponents. So it's a really slight, very subtle difference, but it gives you a lot more spin. You don't wanna go all the way over like you do in tennis because you might miss the ball or you might hit the ball, but just adding a little bit of a kick behind your contact point when you hit it is going to give you a lot more spin. You kind of have to get the feel for this, so you got to go practice it. But once you get it down, you're going up and a little bit forward towards the ball, so you get extra power. It gives you way, way more energy into the ball, way more spin, and you're going to serve a lot harder. As paddles are getting more powerful, the serve is becoming more and more of a weapon, so it's actually very important that you know these techniques so that you can do damage with your serve. A few years ago, you didn't really have to do much with your serve. You couldn't really do much because paddles weren't good enough. So if you want to be able to turn your serve into a weapon, highly recommend you implement these things into your game. It's going to help you a ton. If you want to watch another video where me and Kennedy take you through our best tips, watch this.